For over 400 years, the words of William Shakespeare have practically defined our understanding of love, loss, and life itself. We know the sweeping romance of Romeo and Juliet, the tragic ambition of Macbeth, and the heavy existential questions of Hamlet. His work feels like a cornerstone of world literature, a fixed and unchanging monument. Among his most treasured works is a little 14-line poem, Sonnet 116. It's the gold standard of the love poem, a wedding staple, the perfect summary of devotion. It kicks off with one of the most famous lines in all of poetry, "Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments." It's a powerful declaration that true love is an ever-fixed mark, a constant, guiding star that's never shaken, not even by the worst storms. But this script is based on a fictional premise. The discovery we're about to describe did not actually happen. But what if it did? What if, for nearly 4 centuries, a secret version of this very sonnet lay hidden in one of the world's most famous libraries? Let's imagine a version with just a few small, deliberate changes. Changes that twist this famous declaration of love into a dangerous piece of political propaganda, a coded message of treason, designed to fuel a brutal civil war. What if researchers at Oxford unearthed exactly that? In this thought experiment, this isn't just a new copy, it's a discovery that would force us to question everything we thought we knew about Shakespeare and the secret wars his words were made to fight. The legend we know. Before we dive into what our imaginary discovery changes, we have to understand the real story. Shakespeare's sonnets were first published in a collection, or quarto, in 1609. For a long time, scholars believed they weren't a huge hit. They seemed to fade away, only to be rediscovered and celebrated centuries later. Sonnet 116 is a real standout among the 154 poems. It is the definitive statement on perfect, unwavering love. The poem argues that love isn't the real deal if it alters when it alteration finds. In other words, if things change, or even if a partner is unfaithful, true love holds steady. It doesn't bend. The poem compares this powerful love to a star that every wandering ship, or bark, uses to find its way. Its value is immeasurable, but its guidance is absolute. And it all wraps up with a bold challenge. If this idea of love is wrong, then the author has never written a thing, and no one has ever truly been in love. For generations, that's where the story ended. A beautiful, universal idea about romance and commitment, printed in a book over 400 years ago. But literature isn't always a static monument. Sometimes, it's a living thing, changed and adapted by the turbulent times. And sometimes, those changes are deliberately hidden. The 17th century was a hotbed of what we call manuscript culture. Before printing was fast and cheap, poems and political pamphlets were often copied by hand and passed around. This was a private, almost underground way of sharing ideas. And during a time of intense political and religious conflict, like the English Civil War in the 1640s, this covert network was vital. The country was violently split between the Royalists, who backed King Charles I, and the parliamentarians, who wanted to limit his power. In that atmosphere of paranoia and propaganda, a famous poem could become a powerful tool. A coded message, hiding in plain sight. The discovery in our fictional scenario, the story begins where so many tales of lost knowledge do, deep within the archives of Oxford's Bodleian Library. We'll imagine a researcher, let's call her Dr. Leah Veronese, examining a 17th century miscellany, a kind of scrapbook where people copied poems, recipes, and notes. And in this scrapbook, she finds something that's been overlooked for centuries. Tucked away among other political writings from the era is a handwritten copy of a familiar poem, attributed simply to W.S. It's Sonnet 116. But it's not the version we all know. In our story, this manuscript is only the second known handwritten copy from the period, which would make it an astonishingly rare find on its own. But as our fictional Dr. Veronese looks closer, the real significance becomes clear. The words are different. The manuscript, in this tale, is part of a collection that once belonged to a real historical figure, Elias Ashmole, a prominent politician and antiquarian. Ashmole was a staunch royalist, a fervent supporter of the king during the Civil War. His papers were filled with political texts, and he even used astrology as a form of propaganda, publishing star charts that just happened to favor the royalist cause. Finding an altered sonnet among his personal effects would be the first major clue that this was more than just a poem. The reveal cracking the code: if we placed our imaginary manuscript next to the original, the changes would be electric. They would transform a meditation on love into a blistering political attack. The original, famous opening line is, "Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds." Our newly imagined version could begin with a curse: self-blinding error sees all those minds, who with false appellations call that love, which alters when it alteration finds. The change is stunning. It's no longer a gentle, philosophical statement. It's an accusation. It condemns those who claim their loyalty is true but who switch sides when things get tough. In the 1640s, this wouldn't be about romance. It would be about loyalty to the crown. The poem would now be aimed squarely at those who had abandoned the king for the parliamentarian cause, declaring their new loyalties a self-blinding error. But the changes wouldn't stop there. In our story, the manuscript adds 7 entirely new lines that don't appear anywhere in Shakespeare's known work. These hypothetical lines would make the political message impossible to miss. They could attack those who pervert the sense of scripture and law to justify rebellion. They could criticize the heretic's pretense, a direct shot at the Puritan-led parliamentarians, painting them as religious hypocrites using faith to cover up treason. In this version, the poem's ever-fixed mark is no longer just a symbol of constant love. It's a symbol of unwavering loyalty to the true, unchangeable monarchy. The poem would argue that real constancy is allegiance to the king, and anyone who wavers is not just unloving, but a traitor to God and country. Shakespeare's praise of romantic constancy has been twisted into a demand for political constancy. And for one final, explosive piece of our puzzle, let's imagine the manuscript included a musical score for this rewritten sonnet. And that the composer was Henry Lawes, a real musician from the era who, like Ashmole, was a devoted royalist. Suddenly, it's not just a poem anymore, it's a song. A piece of musical propaganda, likely performed in secret gatherings of royalist supporters to boost morale and demonize their enemies. The imagined journey of this single poem, from a declaration of love to a song of rebellion, shows how history could be full of hidden stories, locked away in archives, just waiting for someone to connect the dots. These kinds of possibilities are what make the past feel so immediate and alive. If you enjoy digging into historical mysteries and uncovering the secrets behind the stories we think we know, please consider subscribing. We have a lot more digging to do. The fallout rewriting history. So, what would a discovery like this actually mean? If this manuscript were real, the implications would be massive. First, it would completely change our understanding of Shakespeare's early popularity. The long-held belief is that his sonnets weren't widely read or influential until the 18th century. A discovery like this would prove that not only were they being read in the 1640s, just decades after publication, but they were considered culturally important enough to be weaponized in a civil war. People weren't just reading Shakespeare, they were actively hijacking his work for political ends. Second, it would give us a rare glimpse into a royalist counterculture. During the war and the Commonwealth that followed, royalist expression was suppressed. A manuscript like this would show how they used art and literature to maintain their identity and resist. Turning a famous love poem into a secret anthem of loyalty is a seriously sophisticated act of cultural defiance. It would demonstrate that literature wasn't just an escape from the political chaos, it was a battlefield. Finally, it would raise fascinating questions about Shakespeare himself. There's no evidence to suggest Shakespeare wrote this version. It would have been adapted by someone else after his death. but it would force us to rethink the supposed neutrality of his work. His poetry, praised for its universal themes, was so powerful that it could be molded to serve the most divisive causes. It would show that once art is released into the world, the author loses control. The meaning of a poem can be transformed by the people who read it, sing it, and use it. From a dusty shelf in Oxford, a single, imaginary manuscript has rewritten a small but significant piece of literary history. It tells the story of how one of our most beloved love poems could have spent part of its life as a song of political defiance, its message of romantic fidelity twisted into a call for loyalty to a king. It reveals a hidden world where literature could be a tool, a weapon, and a secret code shared among allies in a time of war. This thought experiment is a powerful reminder that history is never truly settled. The artifacts of the past aren't always static. They hold secrets that can reshape our understanding. It makes you wonder, as you look at the collected works of the world's most famous writer, what other secrets, what other real coded messages and forgotten histories, are still waiting, silently, to be unearthed.